I was standing in conference room B, halfway through the daily sync. Sarah, my chief of staff, had forwarded an email to my secure channel. I kept my face neutral, my voice steady as I listened to dev team lead Ramirez complain about GPU allocation. But my eyes were on the screen of my phone, tilted just enough under the table. Subject: Project Chimera, new leadership structure. I scrolled. The signature block at the bottom confirmed it. Julian Reeves, creative director, my wife, Victoria, had CC'd the entire executive committee, effective immediately. Julian was taking point on Chimera, my $1, $5 billion quantum AI integration project, the one I'd patented, the one that was 3 months from changing the SP500. I finished the sync. Ramirez, prioritize the tensor cores. Sarah, hold my calls. I walked out. I didn't stride. I didn't stomp. I moved with the quiet efficiency of a system shut down. Victoria's office was at the end of the hall. Glass walls, high floor. The view of Midtown was supposed to intimidate. It didn't. I pushed the door open without knocking. She was there, leaning against her mahogany desk. Julian was in the guest chair, swirling a tumbler of Macallan. They were laughing about something. Probably the gala last night. Victoria looked up, her smile fading into a look of mild annoyance, like I was a waiter interrupting a private dinner. Ethan, she sighed. Do you mind? We're in the middle of something. I placed my tablet on the desk between them. The email was displayed in stark white text against the dark wood. Care to explain this? I asked. My voice was flat. No tremor, just data. Julian leaned forward, his cologne hitting me before his words did. Relax. Buddy, it's just business. Victoria and I are streamlining the brand narrative. Chimera needs a softer edge. Less math, more market. I looked at him, really looked at him. Julian Reeves, a man who used words like synergy and paradigm shift to hide the fact that he couldn't differentiate between a neural network and a phishing net. Chimera isn't a narrative. Julian, I said, is a lattice of homomorphically encrypted quantum algorithms. If you change the input parameters to make it softer, the entire system undergoes recursive collapse. You'll lose the training data before breakfast. Victoria waved a manicured hand, dismissing the physics. Don't be so dramatic. Julian has a team of consultants looking at the architecture. They say it's overly complex. Consultants? I felt a cold flicker of interest. Which firm? Kensington Partners. Julian interjected smoothly. They specialize in scaling consumer-facing AI. We're pivoting. Ethan, moving away from your dense, academic approach. Kensington Partners. I knew them. They were a hedge fund front, notorious for stripping tech assets and selling the IP to the highest bidder. Usually, the highest bidder was Nexus Global, our biggest competitor. I turned to Victoria. You outsourced the core logic of Chimera to a firm that doesn't understand quantum mechanics? I outsourced the leadership. She corrected, her tone sharpening. There's a difference. You're a brilliant engineer, Ethan, but you can't sell. You don't understand the social capital required to keep Etherius at the top. Julian does. I understand that if Julian touches the kernel, he'll trigger the failsafes. I said, and if he triggers the failsafes, the encryption keys fragment, you'll have $1 billion paperweight. Victoria stood up, her posture regal. The board meets at 4. It's already done. You'll report to Julian on the Phase 3 rollout. Or, if you can't handle the chain of command, we can discuss your departure. My departure? I almost laughed. Almost. Victoria, look at the patent filings. Look at the Series B term sheet. I'm not an employee. I'm the founder. You can't just... Watch me. She cut in. She tapped the tablet, highlighting a paragraph. Work for hire. Everything you've built since signing on with Etherius belongs to the company. To me, she was wrong. She'd always been wrong about the legal structure, but I didn't correct her. Not yet. I just nodded, picked up my tablet, and walked out. By noon, Sarah was in my office, her face pale. She closed the door and handed me a thick envelope. HR just dropped this. She whispered, it's a formal warning. Hostile work environment. undermining executive authority. They're citing your resistance to Julian's appointment. I opened it. Standard corporate bullshit. Paragraphs of legalese designed to intimidate someone who didn't know how to read the fine print. I scanned the footnotes. There it was, paragraph 4, subsection C. An attempt to seize my private research archives under guise of intellectual property reclamation. They're moving fast. Sarah said, perching on the edge of my desk. Legal is already talking about freezing your access badges. If they get the judges to sign off on a temporary restraining order, they can lock you out of the servers by midnight. I leaned back in my chair. Let them try. Sarah frowned. Ethan, this isn't a game. If they win the injunction, they can claim Chimera as their own. They'll strip the tech, sell it to Nexus, and you'll be left with nothing. No patents, no equity, just a legal bill. They won't win. I said. I pulled up a secure terminal, one that wasn't connected to the building's network. I started typing. Lines of code scrolled across the screen. Victoria thinks work for hire covers everything. She forgot about the prenup. Specifically, Schedule B, Exhibit 4, the IP carve-out. Sarah's eyes widened. The patent trust? Exactly. The core algorithms for Chimera aren't owned by Etherius. They're held in a private irrevocable trust, licensed to the company. Sure, but the license is contingent on my continued involvement as CTO. If I'm fired, demoted, or if there's a material breach of fiduciary duty by the CEO. I paused, letting the implication hang. The license terminates automatically, and Julian accessing the kernel? Sarah asked, is that a breach? It's worse than a breach. I said. I pulled up the access logs. Red flags everywhere. Look at this. 2 hours ago, Julian tried to bypass the multi-factor authentication on the primary encryption module. Failed, obviously. But then, I highlighted a string of outbound data packets. He routed a subset of the Chimera training data, specifically the predictive analytics for the Q3 earnings model, to an external server. IP address traces back to a shell corporation in the Cayman Islands, registered to Nexus Global. Sarah sucked in a breath. Industrial espionage. That's a felony. It's wire fraud. I corrected. Federal. 20 years. Minimum. And Victoria signed off on the data transfer request. She's an accessory. I saved the logs to an encrypted drive. Then I dialed a number on my secure line. Marcus Voss answered on the second ring. Marcus was a senior partner at Vanguard Peak Capital. He'd backed me since MIT. He wasn't just an investor. He was a mentor. Marcus, I said, it's Ethan. Check your secure inbox. I'm sending you proof of industrial espionage. Victoria and Julian are moving Chimera to Nexus Global. Marcus's voice was gravelly. I heard the rumors. Julian's been bragging at the university club. You wanted to call my lawyer? Not yet, I said. I watched the cursor blink on my screen. I'm triggering the founder's exit clause tonight. I'm taking the patents, the investors, and the talent. Victoria wants a war? She'll get a dissolution. Ethan, Marcus warned, if you do this, she'll burn the house down. She'll call the SEC, the FBI, every regulator in D.C. She'll say you're a rogue employee sabotaging the company. Let her, I said. I looked at the email from Victoria again, the one naming Julian as the new head of Chimera. She's providing the matches. Marcus, I'm bringing the oxygen. I hung up. Sarah was staring at me. What's the next move? I stood up. I'm going to the server room. I need to initialize Protocol 0. Protocol 0? Sarah's voice tightened. Ethan, that's the kill switch. If I activate it, the entire Chimera database undergoes cryptographic erasure. I finished. It won't just be deleted. It'll be mathematically unrecoverable, unless they have the private keys, which are stored on a hardware security module in my briefcase. I picked up the drive with the evidence. Victoria thinks she's playing chess. She's not. She's playing checkers on a board I designed, and I'm about to flip the table. I walked out of the office, down the hall, past the glass walls of Victoria's office. She was on the phone, smiling, probably closing a deal she didn't realize was already void. Julian was beside her, pointing at something on her screen. I didn't look back. I had a date with a server rack, and a future that didn't include either of them. The elevator doors closed. I pressed a button for the sub-basement. Time to rewrite the terms of the exit. The server room hummed. Not music, not noise, just a baseline frequency of $1 billion in silicon. Sarah followed me in, pulling the heavy door shut. The soundproofing killed the office chatter upstairs. Good. We needed silence for what came next. I opened my briefcase. Inside, a matte black HSM, hardware security module, about the size of a cigarette pack. I plugged it into the terminal. Biometric scan. Retina. The system recognized me. It always did. Sarah leaned against the rack, arms crossed. Talk me through it. Ethan, if Julian logs in at 8 a.m. like he promised Victoria, what exactly does he see? I typed, lines of code scrolled. He sees a dashboard, green lights, status nominal. But the data ingestion layer? I've rerouted it. Every byte of training data Chimera uses now flows through a recursive hash function tied to my private key. Julian changed the API endpoints yesterday. He bragged about it in the dev chat, called it unleashing the beast. He broke the handshake between the input layer and the processing core. Sarah raised an eyebrow. So the system is eating corrupted data? Worse. I said, it's encrypting it with a transient key. The key fragments and scatters across the distributed ledger every 60 seconds. By 9:03 a.m., when Julian tries to run the morning diagnostics, the system will initiate a cryptographic purge, not a delete, an erase. The data won't exist anymore. Not on any drive. Not in any backup. Gone. Can they recover it? Only if they have the HSM. And this, I tapped the side of my head. The algorithm uses post-quantum lattice cryptography. Even with 1 million GPUs, it would take longer than the heat death of the universe to brute force the keys. Sarah nodded. Processing. Victoria's going to lose her mind. She's going to lose her company. I corrected. But first, she's going to get a lesson in fiduciary duty. My phone buzzed. Secure line. Marcus Voss. Ethan, he said, his voice low. I just got off the phone with legal. Victoria's counsel is already drafting a TRO, temporary restraining order. They're alleging you're about to abscond with trade secrets. They're moving to freeze your assets by 7 a.m. I kept typing. Tell them to try. The trade secrets are in the trust. The trust is irrevocable, and the assets they want to freeze are currently dissolving inside their own servers. Marcus chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. You're enjoying this. I'm applying logic to a problem. I said, Victoria introduced a virus into the system. I'm the antivirus. I hit enter. Protocol 0 initialized. A green progress bar filled the screen. 10%, 20%, 30%. Sarah checked her watch. For hours until market open. Plenty of time. I said, at 7:45 a.m., the shit hit the fan. I was in the break room, pouring a black coffee, when Julian stormed in. His hair was mussed, his tie loose. He looked like he hadn't slept. Behind him, Victoria was yelling into her Bluetooth headset. I don't care what the sysadmins say. Find the goddamn data. The Vanguard peak board call is in 15 minutes. Julian spotted me. His face turned purple. You, he jabbed a finger. You did this. The servers are bricked. The data's gone. I took a sip of coffee. Language. Julian, it's 7:50 in the morning. Victoria swept in, her heels clicking like gunshots. Ethan, what did you do to my company? I set the mug down. Your company? Interesting choice of pronoun. Victoria. Last I checked, the articles of incorporation list me as the primary shareholder. You're just the CEO. A title I granted you. Granted me? She laughed, high-pitched and brittle. You arrogant little prick. I made you. I gave you the connections. The social capital. The social capital that's currently evaporating because you put a man who thinks Python is a snake in charge of a quantum AI project? I interrupted. Julian, tell her. Tell her what you did to the API endpoints. Julian's eyes darted between us. I optimize them for the Nexus Global presentation. Nexus Global? Victoria whipped around. What the hell is he talking about? Julian paled. Baby, I was just... Save it, I said. I pulled out my phone, played the recording I'd lifted from the server logs. Julian's voice, clear as day, talking to a contact at Nexus. Once Victoria signs off on the data transfer, we'll have the core algorithms. Vanguard peak will fold, and we'll be sitting on a gold mine. Victoria stared at Julian, her mouth opened, then closed. For the first time in our marriage, she had nothing to say. Wire fraud. Julian, I said quietly, conspiracy to commit industrial espionage, federal offenses, 20 years, minimum, and Victoria, as CO, you signed the data transfer request. You're an accessory before the fact. Victoria found her voice. It was a whisper. You recorded us? I logged you. I corrected. There's a difference. And I've already sent the logs to Marcus Voss. He's forwarding them to the SEC, the FBI, and every reporter in New York with a pulse. Julia made a strangled sound. You can't do this. I'll sue. You'll do nothing. I said. I stepped closer, because in about 10 minutes, the entire Chimera database is going to undergo cryptographic erasure. The data you sold to Nexus, it'll be mathematically unrecoverable. The gold mine you were counting on, it's about to become a very expensive pile of silicon. Victoria grabbed my arm. Her nails dug in. Stop it. Reverse it. Ethan, please. I peeled her hand off. Please? You sent me a warning letter. Victoria, you call me a hostile employee. You gave my life's work to your lover. And now you're asking me to, please fix it? No. I walked toward the elevator. Sarah fell into step beside me. Ethan, Victoria screamed. I'll destroy you. I'll take everything. The patents. The house. I turned. The elevator doors opened. You can't take what you never owned. I said, the patents are in the trust. The house is in my name. Prenup, remember? And as for the company, well, you're about to learn the difference between a balance sheet and a bankruptcy filing. The doors closed. Sarah looked at me. That was cold. It was physics. I said, action, reaction, cause, effect. The elevator descended. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. SEC just froze Ethereus trading accounts. Reporters are swarming the lobby. You're clear to announce Vance Singular. I smiled. First time all morning. Sarah, I said, call the Wall Street Journal. Tell them we're holding a press conference at 9 a.m. Subject, the future of AI. And Victoria, let her explain the missing $1, $5 billion to the bankruptcy court. I said, I'm done cleaning up her messes. The elevator hit the ground floor. The doors opened. Sunlight, cameras, the future. I walked out, Sarah beside me, the HSM secure in my briefcase. Behind me, the building shook, not physically, metaphorically, the sound of a dynasty crumbling under the weight of its own stupidity. I didn't look back. The conference room at Vanguard Peak smelled like money and fear. Fear on the other end of the fiber line. Marcus sat at the head of the polished mahogany table, steepled fingers hiding his mouth. I stood at the lectern, a single monitor displaying the Zoom grid, 32 squares, 32 portfolios, collectively worth north of $40 billion. And every single one of them was currently watching Ethereus dynamic stock ticker slide into the red. Sarah slid a note across the table. Victoria's call starts in 3 minutes. Patch your audio? I nodded. Marcus hit a key. The feed from Etherea's boardroom bled into our speakers. Victoria's voice, artificially bright, cutting through the static. Good morning, everyone. I want to assure our investment partners that the technical anomalies reported earlier have been isolated. Ethan Vance, our former CTO, engaged in a reckless act of sabotage. But rest assured, our transition to new leadership under Julian Reeves is seamless. Chimera is not only intact, it's evolving. Julian's voice chimed in, smoother, The practiced cadence of a man selling snake oil. What we're rolling out now is a leaner, more agile framework. Ethan's architecture was robust, sure, but it lacked the consumer-facing elasticity today's market demands. We're stripping the bloat, streamlining the stack. Think of it as Chimera 2.0. I muted their feed and leaned into the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a lie. Silence on the line. Then Marcus, cool and authoritative. Ethan, walked them through the IP structure. Happy to, I said. I advanced the slide. A single bullet point. Stark white on black. Asterisk U. S. Patent numbers. 11. 487. 229. 11. 502. 104. 11. 516. 887. Held in the Vance Family Irrevocable Trust. License. Not owned. By Etherius Dynamics. License terminates upon A. Termination of my employment. B. Material breach of fiduciary duty by CEO Victoria Vance. Or C. Unauthorized access to core encryption modules. A voice from the grid, David Kim, partner at Sequoia Heritage. Ethan, are you saying Victoria doesn't own the patents? I'm saying Victoria has a license. I corrected. One that expired the moment Julian Reeves attempted to bypass the HSM security protocols at 6:42 this morning. The logs are time-stamped. The FBI has a copy. So does the SEC. Another square lit up. Patricia Moreno from Andreessen Horowitz. Victoria told us the data loss was contained. That backups exist. There are no backups. I said, Protocol 0 doesn't delete data. It executes cryptographic erasure. The encryption keys are fragmented across a distributed ledger. Without the private key, stored on a hardware module in my possession, the data is mathematically irrecoverable, not corrupted, not missing, gone, permanently. The grid erupted, voices overlapping, demands for clarity, threats of litigation. Marcus raised a hand, and the room quieted. He unmuted the Etherius feed just in time to catch Victoria's shrill reply to an unseen questioner. Completely overblown. Ethan is a disgruntled employee trying to extort the company. We have Kensington Partners on standby to reconstruct the algorithms. We'll be at full capacity within 90 days. Julian again. Louder now. Desperation leaking through. The math is irrelevant. It's about the brand narrative. We've already secured preliminary interest from Nexus Global for a strategic partnership. I unmuted our line. Nexus Global? The same Nexus Global Julian emailed at 2:17 this morning offering to sell them the Chimera source code for a 9-figure signing bonus and equity stake. That Nexus Global? The silence on both ends of the line was absolute. Then Marcus, his voice like a blade. Victoria, is there any truth to that? Static. Then Victoria, stammering. It was a contingency. Julian was securing our position. Contingency? David Kim cut in, his tone glacial. You were negotiating the sale of our core IP behind our backs while telling us the project was evolving? Patricia Moreno joined in. Victoria, you assured us at the Series C close that Ethan was a co-equal partner, that his involvement was non-negotiable. Why weren't we informed of this restructuring? Julian tried to salvage it. People, please. This is exactly why Ethan needs to be sidelined. He's a technician, not a leader. He doesn't understand the optics. I understand the law. I said, cutting him off. And I understand fiduciary duty. Victoria breached hers when she authorized unauthorized access to protected IP. Julian breached his when he attempted to exfiltrate data to a direct competitor. Both are federal offenses. Both carry prison time. Marcus sees a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, Vanguard Peak has reviewed the evidence. We verified the patent trust. We confirmed the data erasure. And we've reached a decision. We are exercising our contractual right to withdraw our Series C investment from Etherius Dynamics effective immediately. Those funds are being redirected to Ethan's new venture, Vance Singular, which retains full rights to the Chimera technology. One by one, the dominoes fell. David Kim, Sequoia Heritage is in We'll follow Vanguard's lead. Patricia Moreno, A16Z as well. Our investment was in Ethan's vision, not Julian's narrative. Square after square. Kleiner Perkins. Benchmark. Greylock. Founders Fund. Each announcement a nail in Etherea's coffin. On Etherea's feed. Victoria's breathing was ragged. You can't do this. You'll destroy us. I'll sue. You'll do nothing. Marcus said, his tone final. Your company is insolvent. Your IP is gone. Your investors have abandoned you. The only question now is whether you want to face the SEC investigation with a lawyer or a public defender. Julian's voice, suddenly small. Victoria, maybe we should call Kensington. Shut up, Julian, Victoria shrieked. The sound of something crashing. Her laptop. Maybe. This is your fault. You said you could handle the tech. You said he was replaceable. Their feed cut out abruptly. Static, then the dial tone. Marcus muted the line. He looked at me, one eyebrow raised. Well, that was thorough. Sarah passed me a fresh espresso. The vultures are circling. CNBC's already reporting a 40% pre-market drop. Trading halted pending news. I checked my watch. 9:47 a.m. Give it an hour. Once the SEC confirms the investigation, the stock will be worthless. Victoria's personal guarantees on the corporate debt will come due. She'll lose the Park Avenue apartment, the Hamptons house, the vineyard in Napa. And Julian? Sarah asked. He'll disappear. I said, men like Julian always do. He'll resurface at some third-rate startup in Austin, pitching AI disruption to angels who don't know any better, until they check his references. Marcus stood, buttoning his suit jacket. I'll handle the press release. Vanguard peak backs Van Singular in landmark AI relaunch. That should stabilize the markets. He paused at the door. Ethan, why not just fight her in court? Drag it out. Make her suffer publicly? I swirled the espresso in the tiny cup. Court is for people who need validation. Marcus, I don't need a judge to tell me I'm right. I needed the market to prove she was wrong. She thought value was in the corner office, the social connections, the husband she could parade. Value is in the code, in the math, and when the math disappears, so does the empire. Sarah gathered her notes. The engineers are already moving. 80% of the Chimera team accepted offers from Van Singular. We'll have a skeleton crew at the new offices by Monday. I nodded. Good. Tell them to prioritize the Q4 rollout. We're not just rebuilding. We're correcting a market inefficiency where mediocrity was allowed to lead. Marcus left. Sarah followed. I stayed in the conference room, alone with the hum of the servers and the ghost of Victoria's voice on the deadline. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Ethan? A woman's voice. Shaking. It's Victoria. I didn't hang up. Didn't speak. Just listened to her breathe. Please. She whispered. Don't do this. I'll step down. I'll give you the company. Just don't let them arrest me. Don't let me lose everything. I closed my eyes. Saw the warning letter on my desk. Saw Julian smirk. Saw the $1. $5 billion project reduced to ash because she valued a lover's ego over technical reality. Victoria. I said, my voice flat. You didn't lose everything. You spent it on bad advice, worse judgment, and a man who couldn't tell a tensor from a tentacle. The time for pleas ended when you signed that data transfer request. The time for consequences starts now. I ended the call, blocked the number, deleted the log. Outside, the city roared. Sirens in the distance, heading uptown, toward Etherea's headquarters. No doubt, let them come. Let her explain the missing millions to a grand jury. I stood, straightened my cuffs, and walked out. The elevator doors closed on the silence of the room, opened onto the bustle of the lobby. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. I ignored them all. Sarah was waiting by the town car. Marcus says the press release is live. Stock futures are up. We're trending on Twitter. I slid into the leather seat. Good. Tell the team, no interviews, no comments. We're not here to gloat. We're here to build. The car pulled into traffic. I watched the skyline blur past. Somewhere, Victoria was realizing the true cost of her arrogance. Somewhere, Julian was updating his LinkedIn profile. And somewhere, in a server farm in New Jersey, the last remnants of Chimera were dissolving into entropy. Physics, not vengeance. I closed my eyes, for the first time in months. I slept. The opening bell at 9:30 a.m. wasn't sound. It was a death knell. I was in Marcus's private office at Vanguard Peak, watching the Bloomberg terminal. Ethereus Dynamics, ticker ADHR, was already halted. Pre-market trading showed a 62% plunge. The volume was astronomical. It wasn't just selling. It was a fire sale and an earthquake. Sarah burst in without knocking. The circuit breakers tripped. They're halting trading for the second time this morning. Down 72% now. The NYSE just issued a statement. They're investigating irregularities in the Chimera data disclosures. I didn't look away from the screen. Get me the CFO's line. Derek Simmons. She patched him through on the speaker. Derek's voice was high-pitched, frantic. Ethan? Jesus Christ. Man, what did you do? The margin calls are coming in every 2 minutes. The prime brokers are demanding we post more collateral because they devalued our entire IP portfolio to near zero. Morning. Derek. I said, my tone even. I didn't do anything. Julian did. He broke the encryption. The data is gone. You can't post collateral that doesn't exist. We have physical assets. Derek yelled. The data centers. The real estate. The data centers are leased. The real estate is under Victoria's personal name, but heavily mortgaged. And the cloud compute bills? AWS just suspended our enterprise account for non-payment. You've got about 4 hours before every server in Virginia goes dark. A loud crash echoed over the line, followed by Victoria's muffled scream. Get me my father. Now. Derek came back on, whispering. Listen, Ethan, if I shift the remaining liquid assets to a holding account, can you vouch for me with Marcus? I had nothing to do with Julian's bullshit. Too late for that. Derek, I said, you signed off on the quarterly reports. You certified the accuracy of the Chimera valuations. The SEC is already looking at your signature on the S-1. You're an accessory to securities fraud. Enjoy the grand jury. Derek, I hung up. Sarah was already fielding another call. It's Thorne's Senior S office. He's online too. I picked up. Arthur Thorne's voice was like gravel being crushed. You destroyed my daughter. Ethan, do you have any idea what you've cost his family? I know exactly what it cost. Arthur, I replied, 3 generations of Thorne capital, squandered because Victoria thought her social pedigree was a substitute for a functioning brain. I didn't destroy her. I just removed the scaffolding. She built the house on sand. You smug son of a bitch. Arthur hissed. I'll bury you. I'll call in every favor in D.C. The DOJ will have you in cuffs by sundown. Try it. I cut in. Call the Attorney General. While you're at it, ask him about the ongoing investigation into Thorne Industries' offshore tax shelters in the Caymans. Oh, and mention the name Nexus Global. I'm sure the IRS would love to see the paper trail between Victoria's creative accounting and Julian's new friends. You want to play hardball? Fine, but your daughter is currently the lead defendant in a federal wire fraud case. If you drag me into it, I'll subpoena every Thorne family trust dating back to 1920. Is saving Victoria's pride worth losing the entire family legacy? Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Then, a defeated exhale. What does she need to do? Arthur asked, the fight draining out of him. Nothing. I said, there is no need. The company is insolvent. The stock is worthless. The best thing she can do is file for Chapter 11 before the SEC freezes her personal assets. And tell her to stop calling my phone. If I get one more call, I'm forwarding the logs to the U.S. Attorney's office personally. I ended the call. Marcus walked in, pouring a scotch. Thorne Sr., begging for mercy. I said, told him to save his breath. Marcus nodded toward the monitor. Looks like the begging has started downstairs. He switched the feed to an internal camera in the Ethereus lobby. Victoria was in the center of the marble floor, still in her Chanel suit, but her hair was coming undone. Julian was trying to edge toward the elevator, a small box of personal belongings tucked under his arm. Victoria spotted him. She lunged. "Where the hell do you think you're going?" she shrieked. The sound echoed off the high ceilings. Several junior analysts stopped to stare. Julian tried to sidestep her. "Victoria, baby, relax. We need to strategize. I have contacts at Nexus. They might still be interested in the concept. You ruined me." Victoria clawed at his arm. The box fell, spilling out a framed photo, a few golf trophies, and a half-empty bottle of bourbon. "I gave you everything. I trusted you." Julian finally dropped the act. He shoved her back. Hard. Victoria stumbled, catching herself on a potted plant. Security started moving in, but hesitated. She was still the CEO. "Technically, get your hands off me, you delusional bitch," Julian snarled, straightening his tie. "You thought you were some kind of tech titan because you married a nerd? Please, you're just a spoiled Park Avenue brat who couldn't code her way out of a paper bag. I was using you to get to the tech. And guess what? The tech's gone. And so is your money. Nexus called me an hour ago. They rescinded the offer. No one wants to buy a ghost." Victoria's face crumpled. You said we'd be legends. You said we'd be bigger than Zuckerberg and Chan." "I say a lot of things." Julian sneered. "That's called sales. Sweetheart. Something you clearly never learned. Now, get out of my way. I have a flight to San Francisco." There are plenty of other naive heiresses who think synergy is a technical term. He kicked the fallen box aside and strode toward the elevator. Security parted for him. No one stopped him. Victoria collapsed onto the floor, sobbing into her hands as the elevator doors closed on her future. Sarah looked away from the screen. Cold, efficient. I corrected. Julian just executed the final step of the con. Take the money. Leave the wreckage. Victoria was too blind to see it. Marcus swirled his drink. What's next for her? Bankruptcy court. I said, then civil suits from the shareholders. Then, if the evidence holds, a federal indictment. She'll plead down to a misdemeanor if she's lucky. Spend 6 months in a minimum security facility upstate. She'll hate that more than prison, the loss of status. I stood up. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a cold, clear focus. Sarah, cancel the rest of my day. I want a full audit of the talent acquisition team. Everyone who resigned from Etherius today gets an offer letter from Van Singular by 5 p.m. Priority on the infrastructure engineers. And the press? She asked. Ignore them. I said, we don't gloat. We build. Let Victoria explain her failures to the New York Post. We'll let the product speak for itself. I walked to the window. Outside, the city was indifferent. People rushed past, worried about their own lives, their own bills. Somewhere, a news helicopter was circling the Etherius building. Somewhere, Victoria was being escorted out by security. Marcus joined me. You know, most people would want to watch the downfall, the perp walk, the mugshot. I shook my head. Watching her suffer isn't the point. Marcus, the point is that the system corrected itself. Bad code was identified, isolated, and deleted. The market is just a compiler. I turned away from the window. Let's go. We got a Q4 launch to prepare for. And unlike Victoria, I don't have time to cry over spilled milk. As we left the office, my phone buzzed one last time. A text from an unknown number. Probably Victoria, using a burner. I hope you're happy. I hope you rot. I deleted it. Blocked the number. For the last time, the elevator doors closed. The numbers climbed, upward, toward the future. 6 months. 182 days since the bell rang on the Etherius collapse. I was in the glass box, the new Van Singular boardroom on the 67th floor of 1 Vanderbilt. Same skyline, different flag. Below us, the city didn't remember Etherius. It never does. The market has a memory of a sieve. Sarah slid a folder across the polished walnut. Bankruptcy court finalized Etherius liquidation this morning. Thorne family bought the remains for 19 cents on the dollar, mostly just the furniture and the bad leases. The brand name is officially dead. I flipped the folder closed. Victoria? Living in a rental in Astoria. 2 bedrooms. She's burning through what's left of her personal accounts on legal fees. The SEC investigation is moving to the grand jury phase next month. Her lawyer is pushing for a plea deal. 6 months. White-collar camp upstate. No chance of beating it. Not with the Nexus Global paper trail Julian left behind. I nodded. And Julian? Sarah actually cracked a smile. Last seen in Austin. Trying to pitch a Web3 AI synergy startup to some angels in a WeWork. He's calling himself a visionary in residence now. No one's biting. His LinkedIn is a graveyard of open to work posts. Good, I said. Let him linger in the shallow end. He's not worth the energy to drown. I stood up. Marcus was waiting by the elevator, his silver hair immaculate. Ready for the last dance? He asked. I'm ready to close the loop. I corrected. We drove in silence across the bridge. Astoria was a different world. Gritty, loud, real. No doormen, no marble lobbies. Just the smell of halal carts and exhaust. We found the apartment on the 3rd floor of a walk-up. The paint was peeling. The hallway smelled like old carpet. I knocked. Once. Victoria opened the door. She was wearing sweatpants and a faded NYU hoodie. No makeup. Her hair was pulled back in a messy knot. She looked smaller, defeated. For a second, I saw the ghost of the woman I'd married. The one who used to talk about changing the world before she decided taking the world was easier. She blinked, her eyes red-rimmed. Ethan, what are you doing here? I'm here for the signatures, I said, holding up a thin manila envelope, the NDA waivers. Your lawyers have already reviewed them, signed them, and I don't testify at the grand jury. I don't mention the offshore accounts your father hid. I don't mention the tax evasion. You get your 6 months in a minimum security facility, and you get to keep whatever dignity you have left. She stared at the envelope like it was a snake. You came here to gloat? After everything? After ruining my life? Marcus stepped forward, his voice a low rumble. He came here to end it. Victoria, there's a difference. Gloating is for children. This is business. Victoria's hand trembled as she reached for the envelope. She pulled out the papers, scanning the dense legalese. You're making me sign away my right to ever speak about you? About us? Ever? You lost the right to speak about me when you signed the warning letter. I said, you lost the right to us when you handed my life's work to your lover. This isn't punishment. Victoria, it's a firewall. I'm purging the malware from my system. You're just the final line of code. She looked up, tears streaming down her face. I made you. Ethan, don't you forget that. I gave you the platform. I gave you the connections. You were nothing before me. A basement-dwelling nerd with a pipe dream. I stepped closer, not to comfort her, to clarify. You didn't make me, Victoria. I said, my voice quiet but sharp enough to cut glass. You were just the first investor in a company you never bothered to understand. You gave me a platform? Sure, but I built the engine. You confuse proximity to power with having power. You thought, because you could throw a gala and name drop at the Met, you were a titan. You were just a tourist in a world you didn't have the IQ to navigate. I tapped the papers. Sign them. Or don't. If you don't, I'll spend the next decade in depositions. I'll bankrupt your father. I'll make sure your name is synonymous with fraud in every business school in America. And when you get out of prison, you'll be delivering pizzas to pay off the fines. Your choice. She stared at me, hatred and despair mixing in her eyes. Slowly, with a shaking hand, she picked up the pen. She signed 3 times. The scratch of the nib on paper sounded like a tomb closing. She slid the papers back. Are you happy now? I picked up the envelope, tucking it into my coat. Happiness is a chemical reaction. Victoria, it's fleeting. I'm not here for happiness. I'm here for efficiency. I turned to leave. She called after me, her voice breaking. Aren't you even going to gloat? I paused at the doorway. Marcus was already in the hall. I looked back at the shell of the woman who had once owned half my bed. Gloating is for people who care about the past. I said, I'm here to ensure you sign these, so I never have to hear your name again. Victoria, you thought you were playing chess with me, but you were playing checkers on a board I designed. The fact that you lost isn't revenge. It's just physics. I walked out. The door clicked shut behind me, the sound echoing in the narrow hall. Marcus fell into step beside me as we descended the stairs. Physics, not vengeance. He murmured, approvingly, that'll be a headline somewhere. It's already a fact. I said, back advanced singular. The atmosphere was electric. The launch team was huddled around monitors. Sarah met me at the elevator. We're green across the board. The new Chimera architecture is processing at 400 petaflops. Latency is 0. The Fortune 500 clients are already lining up. I walked into the main conference room. 24 of the brightest minds in AI turned to face me. No cheers, no applause, just readiness. They understood the stakes. They understood the signal. I didn't waste time on introductions. I didn't mention Victoria. I didn't mention the past. Status report. I said, looking at the lead architect. All nodes synchronized. Ethan, the new encryption protocol is holding. We're live. I looked at the massive screen dominating the wall. It showed a real-time map of the globe, pulsing with light as data flowed through the new network. It was beautiful. It was silent. It was mine. Let's get to work. I said. The room erupted into the rhythmic clatter of keyboards, the hum of servers, the sound of creation. I walked to the window, looking out over the city that had tried to eat me alive and failed. Sarah peered at my shoulder. You okay? I'm optimized. I said, this was never about winning against Victoria. It was about proving that in a world of noise, the signal always wins. I didn't take the investors. The investors came to signal. I didn't destroy her. The market corrected an error. I turned away from the window. Schedule the meeting with the DoD liaison for tomorrow and tell legal to draft the IPO prospectus. We're not just building a company anymore. Sarah, we're defining the infrastructure of the next century. She nodded, a fierce pride in her eyes. Yes, sir. I walked back into the heart of the room. The air was cool. The light was clean. And the work was pure. Victoria was a footnote in an SEC filing. Julian was a cautionary tale in a VC's pitch deck. I was the architect of the future. I sat down at my terminal. The cursor blinked, waiting for the next command. I typed a single line of code. The system responded instantly. Perfect harmony. The past was a ghost. The future was a machine. And I was the one holding the wrench.